I want to share a story with you. This is a story of the field trip from hell that I experienced with my 8 students and my co-teacher Juan in 2017 in northern India. This would never have happened in a regular school, but we used to take our students on a field trip to northern India for 3 months. We went to India, Myanmar, Nepal, Thailand, and Cambodia. And the whole purpose was to help them to learn to respect and to appreciate and identify with the struggle of the poor people and to see people as Jesus sees them. And so we were doing a few different things in Kolkatta, including going to Mother Teresa's orphanage there. But then we took a train from Kolkatta to Siliguri. So today's story is just the 48 hours that happened after this during this incident. We got second class sleeper car tickets. So I was like, oh, fancy, second class. Having ridden economy my entire life. So we went into this train, and it had these walls like this in one booth, and then it had seats that would flip down like this, and then another, something behind it was kind of like a cushion, but then it would flip down, become a bed, and then there was another bed up above, quite near the ceiling, with a fan right above there as well. So then this is no sheets or anything. It was just kind of like a plastic or vinyl cover. And then so we had we sat on our seats. There were 6 people in the booth, and there were 3 people on the one side, so 9 people. And we were just enjoying. The students took out their books and were reading, and then some of them were playing games. Some of them were messing around and singing songs, and we were just 9 hours till we get to Siliguri. That was not to be. After about 3 hours, the train stopped in just the middle of rice paddies as far as you could see. And it did not start again. We just sat there in the blazing August monsoon heat and moisture. And we sat. And after a few hours, I started seeing people just getting off the bus and wandering away. And so Haiwachu, we had our Korean teachers, and then we had 2 Naga Indian teachers. Naga people don't like to say that they're Indian, but they're from that country. But so they Haiwachu, fortunately, he knew about 8 languages, and so he was able to find someone to communicate with, and he went and he came back and he said, hey, I heard there's a flood up ahead, and that's why the train has stopped, but it doesn't make sense why we've stopped out here in the middle of the jungle instead of at the station, because there's no water here. And so immediately I began thinking about survival preparations, which I didn't end up needing, fortunately. And so we waited and waited, and this waiting period is most characterized by this one kid. He had drumsticks with him, and he was going and everything, and going, I believe I can fly, I believe and he didn't know English, so he just kind of mumbled the words and just serenaded us endlessly for 3 hours. Well, we waited there. Eventually, the train started moving again, and so we got to the next station, and we got down with all of our bags, and we had a full drum ensemble of samulnori drums, which are quite large drums, which we were using to go to different places around the country and give drum performances. And so every kid had a drum or a gong, and then we all had 3 months worth of baggage also with us we were carrying. So we got off, and we were just waiting there along with hundreds and hundreds of other people for the next train. And everyone really wanted to get where they were going. There was a flood, so we had heard, but all we could see was it wasn't raining. And so we were all trying to get where we were going. Well, the next train came, and so we all packed onto that train. Just wherever there was people going in, we just packed on. Because, like, if you're left behind, then you're stuck there, right? With no phone, no money, no way to contact anyone, and no way to speak the native language. So I just quickly got onto whatever part of the train I could find. And then I ended up in third class, like regular, and that was interesting. So second class had beds, but third class just had like the benches, which could be, I guess, used as beds. But then there was no middle bed, and then the top there was just a luggage rack, which was kind of like wooden slats, which you could put luggage on. But because there were so many people, there were usually, I told you earlier, 9 people in that same area. Well, instead, there were maybe 22 or 30 people in the same area, together with all of our baggage, and there were people sitting on the luggage racks. They were kind of special people who were on a pilgrimage to, like, religious something, and these kind of people, you would see them from place to place. They would all wear orange, kind of traditional robes, and go around and ask for money from people, so that they could go on their pilgrimage. But these were like economy version of those pilgrims, because they were just wearing like t-shirts which had been obviously dyed orange at home. And they were all perched up there on this upper rack, like they're, because the ceiling is right here, so they're just like this looking down at us. And then me and a bunch of other people are on this side, and then across from me there was a family with some little kids, and then there was a sort of large Brahmin, like upper class Indian man who was, everyone else is like this, and he was just like man spreading and just like, And then soon another upper class Brahmin man came to him and said, "Hey, give me your seat." And he said, "No, I will not give you my seat." And they began to fight. "No, you have been sitting. Now it is my turn to sit. Be a man, be a gentleman. Let me sit." And the guy said, "No. Anyway, why would you want to sit? The sitting is showing you're weak, so you should stand like a man." And the other one was like, "No, then you are the one sitting like a woman, so therefore you should stand up as well." And then the guy was like, "Oh man, I'm like embarrassed now." So he stood up and he's like, "Well, you sit then, because you're the woman, obviously." Now neither of them will sit in the seat. So we're all like packed together, and then he's like taking 1/3 of the seat, where, there's 6 other people taking up the other 2/3 of the seat. And none of them will sit down. They just stood there glaring at each other. And so then after some time, I forgot to share just before this. So before I was able to get into where there were seats, I was stuck in the doorway for a long time. And in the doorway, there were no doors. It was just like nature flying by as fast as you can look at it, which I loved because I am obsessed with bird watching. So I was like watching every single bird, up there in like northern India, you can see greater adjutants, which are like very, very rare. So I was like kind of excited. But yeah, it was so packed we couldn't move because we had all the drums between us. But eventually I did get inside where there was those crazy Brahmin guys fighting. Anyway, so then I fell asleep kind of. And then I woke up to the sound of Haiwachu, the Naga guide, saying something through the window, because we had stopped at a station, and there were bars in the window. There was no glass or like shutters or anything, right? It was just open holes in the side of the train that had bars in them. And so he was saying, "Hey, can you we're gonna get off at the next station." And like after some time I was able to understand what he said. Partially I was tired, and partially it was a strong accent. And so I waited and did get off at the next station. But before I talk about the station, I want to explain to you what train bathrooms are like in Indian trains. So train bathrooms, you think like a really small space with a toilet and a sink, right? No. You go into this room and you latch it, and there's just a hole in the ground that goes straight down into the tracks. And there's a sign that says, "Do not use the toilet while the train is stopped at a station," because then all the poop would go on the tracks right by the station, and the whole station would be stunk up. So, and then there was just like a Mountain Dew bottle that had been cut in half, so you could like dip it into a bucket of water and like pour it on yourself after you relieve yourself. So yeah, just like fresh air, I guess, like coming up from the bottom of the train. I mean, it kind of makes sense, I guess, but I don't think you would just never see anything like that in America or Korea or any other developed nation. Anyway, so then after that, we got off the train at the station, and it was dark, very dark. Like, there wasn't electricity in this village, town, to speak of. I just remember it was completely dark, and there was some like far, far away, like one or two very far away lights. And Haiwachu, who really was the MVP in the situation, he found some tuk-tuk drivers. It was the middle of the night, but he found like 7 of them, and he haggled with them until he got a good enough price, and we put all our bags and drums and everything into the back of the tuk-tuks, and then we all crammed into the tuk-tuks, and we went to a hotel. And they said, okay, well, the hotel's on the 4th floor. So we went inside the hotel, and it was completely like an unfinished building. It was dark and no light. There was cement dust everywhere and like feces in the corners, and just like rebar and like unfinished cement. And so then we found the stairs, and we went up 4 flights of stairs, and I'm like, oh my, we're gonna have to sleep like on the dirt? Like, what's going on here? Well, then there was a door, and we opened the door, and it was lighted, furnished, like fancy deluxe looking hotel lobby. So Juwon, she booked 4 rooms, male teachers, male students, female students, and the students, their rooms were not air conditioned, smelled like mold, and were damp. The sheets were damp. But our room had air conditioning, and walking into that room was the blissfulest feeling you can imagine. So we put down our bags, and I thought, all right, shower time. So I went into the bathroom, and you know what? To my right, there was a almost floor-to-ceiling window that had no glass. There were just like kind of some broken, jagged edges of glass around the edges. And then outside you could see nothing but blackness. Just completely black, because there was no electricity in this town apparently. So no lights, just black. So you don't know who's out there, who can see in your window, nothing. And I went to take a shower, and the shower head didn't work. So there was like a tap kind of at belly button level. And so you just kind of had to fill up a container and like put water over your head, kind of that kind of shower. So I washed, and then I went to sleep, and there were 2 single mattresses, so we pushed them together, and I slept on the crack between the 2 mattresses. And even despite that, I slept so well. I was so exhausted. I was so thankful. And the next morning we woke up, and I don't know if we even ate the previous day. Like, we were just really stressed out. But that morning, Juwon, she found chickpea soup that was real spicy. And there was just like 1 bowl. And then she had found some puris, which are these tortillas that are about this big, that are fried in oil and very like flaky. And you just fold that in half and kind of dip it into the soup and eat it. And you know what? We all shared the same bowl that was sitting on these dirty steps outside of the hotel. And we were eating the bread off of there was just a stack of little breads on top of a thin black plastic bag that was, like a small plastic bag. And that was the best soup I've ever had. It really was. I was so thankful. And during this whole time also, like, these students, they're used to a very comfortable Korean life. Never once, they never complained. They were singing hymns sometimes. And that one kid, like I said earlier, drumming on things and singing "I Believe I Can Fly" over and over again. No complaints. They just did whatever we told them to do. and followed along. I was just so impressed by them. But anyway, so we got our bus, we got on the bus, we heard, come hell or high water, we will make it through. That's what the bus driver said, something to that effect. Like, we're gonna go no matter what. So we're like, all right, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to Siliguri. Only 5 or 6 more hours. So we went for like an hour and a half, and then the bus stopped. And we had no idea what was going on. No one said anything to us. We just sat there by the side of the road. There was a fan there, like a big fan, and a lot of people were kind of huddled in front of this fan trying to get some wind from the fan. And we were sitting on these dusty steps somewhere, waiting to see what would happen at this truck stop. I have pictures of this I'll show in a minute. And then we got back on the bus, and we went along until we started seeing streams of water on the road. And then we started seeing, it wasn't raining. Like, this is the weirdest flood ever. It wasn't raining. There were streams of water on the road. And then pretty soon we were going through like knee-deep water, where there were people riding their bicycles through the water and people walking, like even women wearing dresses walking through the water. And then we turned a corner and there was a truck going the opposite direction, and the truck driver kind of gave one of these kind of expressions to our driver. And so our driver went around the block and turned around. And as we were driving through these floodwaters, it was the most surreal sight. Like, people weren't freaking out. Like, the water was just kind of like rising up from somewhere. I saw chickens perched along this fence line. They were all perched on the fence line, and then there were cats perched on the posts of the fence line. And then by this fence, there was a little house. And the house had no door. It was just an open door, so the water was just all around the house, and the water was going in the door, about knee deep. And there was a bench in front of the house, and there were 2 young people who were sitting kind of like hunched like this on top of the bench. And so they were all just like up above out of the water, but there was water completely all around them everywhere. And then we drove out of the water, and then we drove back to that same city we had spent the night in again. And then we were stuck there. So we had been stuck there the previous night, and then we were stuck there all then that afternoon. We waited on one street corner, and then a woman came to me and was asking me for money. People always think that because I'm white, I have money. And this really stresses me out because I had literally zero money. I don't know how I survived in my early 20s, but like, I just wouldn't not have money, and like, I never had phone service. And, like, the only thing I had going for me is my binoculars, my bird field guide, and I kept like a first aid kit on me at all times. But I only ever had one extra shirt and like one extra pair of pants. Anyway, so this woman came to me and she was like asking me for money, and Indians, when they ask you for money, they're not like nice about it. They're just like, give me money, like, they just, I don't know. They act like they deserve for you to give them money, which kind of irritates me, especially when I don't even have any money. So I was like trying to give her snacks or something, because also I've seen Slumdog Millionaire, and that giving money to beggars, sometimes they end up being part of some kind of crazy trafficking ring or something. So then she pulled up her dress to show me that on her shin, like here, she had this big long scratch on it that had pus kind of like pooling down. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll give you my antibiotic ointment. So I gave her my antibiotic ointment, and then she like kind of hung out with this, like all happy and smiling. And I was like, well, at least I did something right. And then the students, we had no water, but the students had these huge water bottles, and they went to a place and they filled up the water bottles. But instead of drinking the water, they just started throwing the water all over themselves and all over the street. So then our students had this huge water fight in the middle of the road in this village. And people, hundreds of people were passing by and just like staring at us like, what are these foreigners doing here? We then moved to another area, and we were waiting on a different street corner where we found out where the buses were coming from. So Juwan was figuring we can find a bus that goes back to Kolkatta, and then we can like get back to where we started from. So we were waiting there for many hours. There was a tea stall right next to us. The kids were just kind of spaced out. We waited for many hours, and then some Indian guy came and he said, "Good hotel for foreigners only, very good price." And never ever trust an Indian man when he tries to sell you something and then ends it with very good price. It's not a good price. But anyway, we did go to the hotel and we rented a room for like 3 hours. And we all got a shower and we all laid down for a second. We just rented one room, so there were all like 12 of us or 15 of us in one room. And then we went back to where the bus was. The bus was supposed to come at like 7 p.m. So we went back to the bus was, and eventually the bus showed up at like 9 p.m. And we got into the bus. We put all our drums on the top. Did I mention we're carrying an entire drum ensemble with us? I don't remember if I said this earlier. We're carrying an entire drum line with us. And so the drums were like on top of the bus and also like in the aisleway between the seats. By seats, I kind of like a loose meaning. What that was actually these springs. There was a seat back, and then there were just an empty space, and there were big springs where you would sit. So I was like, dang, you can't sit on this. Like, you'd end up becoming a human shish kebab or something, you know? Like, so then they pulled out these cushions from somewhere, and then we placed the cushions on top of the springs and kind of like wedged them together, and they became seats. And normally on a normal bus, right, there's 2 seats and then 2 seats. But in this bus, they had taken the same amount of space and made 3 seats. So I was in the middle, and then on one side of me was Kahile, and she's like a little bit larger, and then on the other side of me was Minho, and he also had just gotten out of the military, so he was also very muscularly developed, and so shoulder to shoulder, there was not enough space for us to actually sit in this space. So we were completely pressed against one another. And because of the nature of these springs, as the 3 of us were sitting there, every time the bus driver would hit a bump, we would all, as one, as a unit, just go boing, boing, everywhere we were going the whole night through. It was about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 Celsius, and the dust was rolling in the windows and sticking to us. And Kahile had a cold or something, and she had a fever. And so I remember her laying there, and the sweat and her hair was all stuck to her face, and she looked so sick. And I had a cloth that I put over my face, and so the dust only stuck to here, and then I just, through the cloth, and we all kind of hunkered down for a long night.
Bye.
That driver laying on the horn all night. Dust, heat. I don't think we ever slept. Like, I don't know if anyone slept. We just were kind of like in this dazed situation all night, just enduring. And in the morning, we got down off the bus and we took off our masks, and we were like raccoons. Like, it was gray here, gray from the dust. And then here was like our normal skin color. Like owls blinking in the sunlight. We got our stuff. We made our way back to the hotel. And we collapsed in bed. However, Juwan could not collapse in bed. She had to book 15 airline tickets for everyone. 15, let me see. 13, there were 13 of us. 13 airline tickets for everyone before everything closed the next day for Indian Independence Day. So she booked our airline tickets, and we took an airplane to Siliguri 3 days later. On the airplane, from the air, I could see the flood. It wasn't like just a little localized flood. For a long time, I looked down and I could see flooded rice paddies, flooded villages, and you could tell it was flooded because the entire ground was like light brown because it was all just flood water between all the buildings and like all the fields. And it wasn't raining. It was just clear, but it was just flooded. There was just water everywhere. So we made it to Siliguri, and we all survived. And the parents of these teachers, they never sued us or got upset. They just put their complete trust in us. And these students, they didn't complain. They held on for dear life, and they made it. And all of them are now, 25-year-old adults now who survived that crazy educational experience we inflicted upon them as middle schoolers. And probably they're better off for it. Anyway, that's the story. What about you? Have any of you had a crazy experience traveling overseas? If you have, let me know about it in the comments. I love to hear other people's stories, and I think that storytelling is part of what makes us a community as human beings. So yeah, please share. And hopefully I'll continue to share some of my other stories of adventures later on.